UCS Director has a catalog built into it. And as we mentioned before in previous lessons, don't confuse this catalog with the one that you will see with Prime Services catalog. Why? They're different. They've really got a different audience they're focused on. So the catalog here is a repository for all the user or administrator-defined apps, virtual machines, services, or any other things that can be requested directly from UCS Director. It allows for self-provisioning of different services, and there's a concept in here that allows you to be able to create a lot of templates associated with it. So this is kind of where the templates are going to be stored. All of this information is exposed to Prime Services Catalog if you've got that integration. So you build some of these different catalog components here, and then you'll be able to expose them to Prime Services Catalog so they can be used in that environment. But again, don't confuse the catalog here with the one that sits in Prime Services Catalog. They are two different applications, and this one is more designed for really being an infrastructure or an element manager. So within UCS Director, you've got a number of default catalog types. This is going to be important stuff for the exam. So the standard catalog is basically a VM provisioning solution used to be able to provision standard images. So if you want to have a Windows 2000 server, 2008 server, 2012 server, whatever it is, you can have that standard image that you then expose to the organization, and then they can use the standard catalog to be able to drive those types of configurations. Now, the difference between a standard catalog and an advanced catalog is very simple. It's an orchestration of workflows. So by adding a workflow to a catalog, you make it advanced. That's as simple as it gets. And what that means is you can customize the standard catalog item with a workflow, and then you would then place that into the advanced catalog category. In addition, you also have service containers, and these are application containers for multi-tenancies. So when you think about services containers, that's really your multi-tenant environment. Last but not least, there's the virtual desktop infrastructure. So we have another catalog type to be able to support virtual desktops that are provisioned via XenDesktop. At this time, we're going to go ahead and demonstrate how to get items into the catalog. So the first thing we have to do is we have to go into Policies and Catalogs. And this is going to get us to the list of all of the items that are currently displayed as part of the catalog system. So you got standard catalog and your advanced catalog. These are all the items or all of the virtual machines that I can then load up. So I can provision any one of these within the standard catalog. Now the advanced catalog versus standard, again, the biggest thing here is workflow. So the advanced catalog is something that's more tied towards that customization and being able to drive other features. So I can just simply add a new one if I chose to, or I can go in and actually edit one of these. So we're going to edit this Windows 8 Enterprise version, so you can just see how these are configured. So we'll click Edit, and then you can see here, this is the catalog name. We've got the description of the actual item itself. Notice it's in a standard catalog. We also have a catalog icon, which we're using the Windows image. Notice here there's a number of different choices I could have had here, but since it's a Windows machine, why not use a Windows image? I have the ability to be able to set which group this particular item is available to, so it's available to the sales group. I could select any number of these if I chose to, or I can select them all. Bottom line is I can actually make a catalog item appear in any one of these groups, so I can share the capabilities across multiple groups. I also have the ability to be able to publish it to the end user. If I unselect this, it will not show up in their catalog. So this is going to publish it to that end user. It would be only available for administrators if I didn't have that selected. I also can put it into the cloud itself, so I only have one cloud configured here, but if I had multiple ones, I could apply it to that. I can provision a new virtual machine using an ISO image. So if I wanted to go in and actually create a brand new image, I could use it, configure it this way, and then be able to apply the licensing as well. But here we're going to use an image that's already been created. So this is basically a virtual machine that we're going to clone. So notice here I'm selecting that image of Windows 8 Enterprise, and that's the one that we're going to use as the default base for this, for this image that we're going to allow our users to be able to consume. So we're going to put it in the standard folder, and then that's pretty much the bulk of that configuration. So we'll click Next. So here's the application details. So these details provide, you the ability to be able to set policy based on the type of application itself. So right now it's set for generic virtual machine. It could be web server, application server, database, whatever it is this particular application is running. I'd be able to set policy appropriately to it. But again, in this case, it's just a generic virtual machine, so that's what we're going to select. Here's the contact email and for support for that particular virtual machine, as well as being able to specify what operating system. So you can see there's a number of choices here. If you've got something that's not on that list, you can write it in, which is what we did here. So Windows 8. We're specifying 2012 because it's a very similar architecture. So it gets us close to it, and then we can give further definition by actually typing it in. I can then also go in and start to specify applications. So the applications themselves could be another component that I want to actually have as part of that particular virtual machine. So I've got another number of options here. I can have Apache Web Server, MySQL, whatever it is. I can actually select it from that list, or I can type it in directly. Another thing we can do is provide an application code. The application code is neat because it allows you to be able to set a code that you can add to any one of the names that are generated from the virtual machine. So if I wanted to have a code saying this is a web server, I can have WS as part of the naming convention. So if I had hundreds of virtual machines, I could just very quickly scroll through and search for WS in the name and be able to get all of those that are running a web server. So it's a real handy feature to be able to identify those catalog items if you've got a whole lot of things out there in those virtual machines, if you've got a bunch of them out there. So at this point, we'll click Next. And then we have the option to be able to change or to determine if we're going to share credentials. So in this case, we're not going to share credentials. That's what's currently configured. But if I wanted to, I can share it after the password reset, the initial password reset, or I can share the template credentials. This allows me to be able to give that information directly to the end user once they provisioned it. As it's set now with Do Not Share, I've got to talk to an administrator to be able to get that information. I'm not sending that to them. So we'll go and click Next. And then from here, we're going to go ahead and use the automatic guest customization. So this can put in things like VMware tools and things like that to be able to get the virtual machine ready to go. So I can also go through and do post custom actions, which this allows me to be able to have a workflow initiated after the virtual machine is provisioned. So if I wanted to do some other type of software load, or if I wanted to modify where it sits in the data center, whatever it is I want to do, I've got that ability to be able to select those post provisioning actions. I can do the same thing for the storage catalog. I've got those capabilities of modifying storage and driving that piece. Now let's talk a little bit about the cost computation. So I can choose how the charges are determined, either hourly or monthly, and I can provide an active VM cost or an inactive VM cost. And these are going to allow me to be able to have, that details for the cost accounting feature within UCS Director. Now here we have the ability to be able to set virtual machine access. So I can do web access configuration, which would allow me to be able to use a browser to be able to get access to the virtual machine. I can use remote desktop in the case of a Microsoft system, which is what we have here. Or I can use VMware's remote console, which allows me to be able to use that tool which is built into VMware. So if this was on a Hyper-V server, obviously I wouldn't have that component. I would just be using remote desktop. But that's how we configure those components here. Let's go Next. Now you get the summary of all the different things that we've just configured, and it shows you all of the components, including any costs and charges associated with it. So that's how you would build that item within the catalog. So if I wanted to, I can go in and then reconfigure it or edit it. So this is actually showing you an advanced catalog item. As I mentioned before, these types of catalog items allow me to be able to set a workflow. So this is the icon that I'm going to use for the workflow in this case. So it's just the simple workflow icon. The particular function of this is to reconfigure the CPU for a running virtual machine. It's applied to the group, sales group, and then I can select the folder that's going to be placed in, which in this case is advanced. Now, this is where I actually select the workflow itself, and notice I have a number of workflows I can select here. I can choose multiple ones as well, but as you can see, I've selected the sales reconfigure CPU, and that's going to go in and have a number of different tasks. So that workflow is consisting of 5 tasks to be able to reconfigure that CPU. So there's the summary of it, and then we'll just submit that if we were going to actually make any changes. But since we're not, we'll just close that out. So this is how you would go through and configure standard and advanced catalog items. So one last thing we want to do is we would like to be able to go in and figure out is that catalog item that I configured, is it deployable? So each one of these different items I can go through and do a deployability assessment on. So in this case, we're going to take that one that we just looked at and we're going to do that deployability assessment. And then this is going to allow us to be able to check across all the running virtual data centers whether or not that particular item, that template item that we created, is deployable in the environment. And as we can see here, yes, it is. So we looked through all the different infrastructure components. We're seeing that it is deployable across each one of those. If there was an issue, if there was any type of problem, we would see some type of error message under reason for exclusion. But as you can see here, it's fully deployable across my virtual data center. And that gives me the ability to be able to know that that particular item that I created is ready to go and able to be deployed across my infrastructure. So now, at this point, we're going to move into doing a demonstration of how you would actually deploy this and configure this in a standard catalog. So we're going to walk through that process and show you how it would work from UCS Director. Now we're going to go through the process of ordering a virtual machine from the standard catalog. So you'll notice here that I'm logged in as demo user. So demo user is an end user, so I'm going to have the ability to be able to go in and then select which virtual machine I want. So there's a lot of choices here. I'm going to go ahead and choose Ubuntu 12 server. Now this is going to give me some details on the actual catalog selection. So the VM ownership is going to be under dcloud. It's going to be in the sales group. This is already pre-configured for me. Now you'll notice here that I've got the catalog item, the Ubuntu 12 server. So let's go ahead and click Next. Now here I have the ability to be able to set which VDC I want to put it in our virtual data center. Now there's a bronze and a gold. Bronze has less of a service level agreement than gold. So in this case, maybe I want to have a higher amount of uptime. So I'm going to go ahead and select Sales Gold VDC. I also have the ability to be able to set when I want to provision it. Do I want to provision it now or do I want to provision it later? So I'm going to go ahead and select now as the time. I can also set the lease time. In other words, how long I'm going to allow the virtual machine to be configured. In this case, I'm going to leave it up forever. So next. And then we go into being able to configure the different parameters. So here's the number of CPU cores. So default is 1. I can go up to 4. I have the memory size here. The default is 512, but I can go up to 4 gig if I choose to. I'm going to leave that as default. I have the hard disk, which the default is 10 gig, but in this case, I can go all the way up to 50 gigabytes. The interesting thing about it is all of these parameters are going to equate to about $410.24 every 3 months. So that's my cost associated with delivering it. If I move to 15 gigabytes, you'll notice that it's going to increase the cost, showing you how the cost accounting system works when I increase the amount of memory or CPU there. So go ahead and click Next. Now there's no custom workflow available, so there's nothing I have to input, nothing I have to configure. And I'll move on next, and now you can see all the different characteristics that we provisioned, the cost associated with it, and you'll notice as well the first approver is set to admin, so I have an approval system set up. So next I want to go ahead and submit, and I can see that the service request 84 was submitted successfully. Now I can go in here into services, and then I'll see that yes, that service request is in queue and it's currently in progress. So I can get some details on it by double-clicking, and then this tells me where in the process it's at, as well as all the information on the request itself. So I can refresh this, and you can see it going through the process. Now look, you'll notice here that it's stopped at the approval process. So again, I've got to get an administrator to approve the request, and it's going to sit here until that happens. So I'm going to go ahead and show a login as an administrator. So you'll notice up here I'm logged in as administrator. And there's my administrator credentials and everything. And now I'm going to go into Organizations, Service Requests, and then you can see there that service request is in queue. So it's showing it in progress. These are all the current service requests that are in the system. So I can double click on that, or I can just go straight to my approvals. And there I can double click on it and see what's going on. Notice there it says pending approval status. So there it's showing that I have to have an administrator approve it. So let's go ahead and go up to the top bar here so you can see approve, reject, details, cancel request, all these different things. I'm going to go ahead and approve it. So here's the approval by admin, and then I can put in a comment. So go for it. And then we'll approve. So notice approval is made successfully. It's now out of my approvals queue. So let's move over to back to the user side. And we can see here that that approval was put through. Everything's good to go, as well as that comment that I put in as the administrator. So now I'm in the process of provisioning this through VMware. So we'll go ahead and flip over and take a look at what's happening in the background. So here you're actually seeing the VMware vCenter instance. So notice here, that particular virtual machine is now being provisioned into the virtual infrastructure. So all this is happening in the background. We're currently at about 41%, but it's cloning that template that I have for that virtual machine. So you'll see that we're getting ready to get close to being finished. So there's 99% finished. Now it's fully complete. And you'll notice that we're now running that virtual machine. So now we're going to go back to the system, and you can see that that particular service request is now finished, and it's fully provisioned based on that request. So now it's ready to go. And now I can see the virtual resources that I'm now using. So here I've got the VMs that I'm currently using. And you can see there that there is my virtual machine. There's an IP address attributed to it. It's my Ubuntu server. Everything is up and running. It's powered on. It tells me the VDC it's in and everything. I can double click on that and get access to more detailed information. So you're seeing the trending information. Now notice you'll see a big spike where it was booting up, and then once everything is settled down, it's using much less CPU. Same thing on the memory side. But again, now you've got full visibility into that particular virtual machine. You can see the network utilization, you can see the resources, how many CPUs it's using, all those different characteristics are available there. The number of network interfaces, the MAC address, all of that's very easy to get access to right there from UCS Director.